I don't think I could have gone as far as I have without the training from theater, without the training, the vocal training from opera and classical music to be able to do pop music, to be able to do fusion. We very much have the foundation, but I think we need the freedom to also explore what it could be and recognize that that process sometimes is messy.
A viral opera singer, actress, and emerging multi-hyphenate talent who gets to take up space in classical music and entertainment, while building a career on authenticity, culture, and redefining the rules for new generations of artists. What's going on, everyone? It's your girl, Natalie Nadeen, and you're tuned in to Noir Media, a show where conversations and thoughts are rooted in media, culture, and the people shaping them on their own terms. With my guest, I explore everything from film and television to music and digital media. Today's guest is part of a new generation of artists, reshaping how audience engage with classical music and performance. As an actress, an artist, and an opera singer, she's building a career that moves across genres, mediums, and audiences from viral digital moments to powerful performances on stage. This conversation is about representation, reinvention, and creating space where you once didn't see yourself reflected. Allow me to introduce Christina Smith.
Hi!
Oh my gosh. Welcome to Noir and Media.
Thank you so much for having me.
To give just my listeners a little backstory of when I actually met Christina, I want to say it was 2023.
Yes, yeah, February of 2023.
I met Christina in 2023 at the Black Diamond Ball, and actually to take it a step back, I was doing the PR for the Black Diamond Ball. I was working with the PR company, and it was like an early 6 o'clock kind of PR run with their headliner, Shantae Moore. And she was asking me like, okay, how does like the Canadian media work? How can I prep for the show? What should I say about this event? And we're like, we're doing a little like press review before it was time to go on air at 6:30 in the morning. And I said, well, great. There was actually an interview that happened the morning before with another singer who's going to be present at the Black Diamond Ball. So I'm here showing her like the video, and she's like, oh my gosh, who is this girl? And I'm like, I know, right? Like the voice, the vocals be vocaling. Long story short, I'm telling my other friend this story about our press run, and she goes, that's my niece. Like, what? And I said, hold up, small world. And then we get to the actual Black Diamond Ball, and I'm like, okay, we're looking for your niece. Hi, are you Christina? Yeah, I want to introduce you to Shantae. And the rest is history.
It's like, oh my goodness, she's like Shantae. And then I remember when you came up to me, I was like, oh, like I felt like I knew you before that, even though we were just meeting. I was like, this feels like my girl, and she's like introducing me to my next girl. Like it was crazy work.
I'm like, this is just how the universe works, because like one person over here, one person over there, there's never that connection, but there was that connection. Be like, it was just meant to be.
Divine timing.
Yes. So Christina, before we get into anything, tell the people a little bit about who you are, how they can follow you, support you. This is your time to shine.
Yeah, okay. So hi, I'm Christina Smith. I am a classical and opera singer. I am also an actress. You can find me on Instagram at Christina Smith TO. Same thing for TikTok, and on YouTube it'd be Christina Smith Music.
Now, like I said, Christina is an opera singer, which is something you don't really hear about too much, especially this next generation of artists. Like, we see the rappers, we see the R&B singers, we see the pop star, but opera, can you tell us a little bit of how that became your lane?
Yeah, it's so funny because how I always say that opera found me, like I didn't go searching for it. But it was more so like when I moved to Jamaica, I was 11 years old. I couldn't belt to save my life. I tell people this all the time. Like, they're like, how did you get into opera? I couldn't do anything else. So I went to school in Jamaica, and my vocal teacher, Andrea White, she was like, oh, you find it so much easier to sing higher. Let's start you with classical music. So we started working with classical music. Then she gave me like some opera repertoire, and I was like, oh, this is so easy. And I feel like I really found my voice literally and figuratively just by trying something that I would have never thought of doing in that moment. So when I came back to Canada, same thing again. My teachers were like, "Oh, we don't think you can sing." And I was like, "Okay, sure." And then somebody was like, Carol Hassick, she was like, "No, no, no, you can sing. You're just singing the wrong material. Let's try you with more opera. Let's try you with more classical music." And then, of course, by the time you're a teenager, your voice changes a little bit more. So by then, it was even more apparent that I wasn't an Aretha Franklin. I wasn't a Beyonce. It was something that was very specific to me and something that felt so natural to me that it really did find me.
First of all, for them to tell you that you couldn't sing, that just kind of blew me away. Like, excuse me?
Sometimes it just takes the right person to see something in you and nurture that. And that makes all the difference. And that's why I feel so passionate about teachers and our education system because it really does make or break youth.
Absolutely. I think that's something that people kind of take for granted. Sometimes it just take that one person to be like, hey, like, I see, like, if you're a talker, but maybe you're a talker for a reason. So let's
Mhm.
try this. Look at these different mediums. So honestly, as much as we always say to believe in yourself, pay attention to those people as well and nurture those gifts in other people because you never know where it might take them.
And to that point is sometimes when you have someone who's willing to pay it forward in you, that creates a responsibility for you to also pay it forward for someone else because you don't know who might be watching you and saying, "Oh, maybe I could do that." And maybe they just need you to be like, "Yes, you can." We have to be able to share the responsibility of pouring it into each other.
Absolutely. Now, we already stated that you're building this career within the opera music as the genre, and you've now expanded into theater and into acting. And if you guys check out her social media, she got a good 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 great videos on there. Just saying, check her out on IG real quick. What first sparked your love for performance, and when did you realize this could become a real like career path for you?
You know what's so funny? I was talking to somebody about this the other day, and I think, unfortunately, it is growing up like an only child just made me, like, wanna be, like, the center of everything, and it was my mom actually that was like, "Yeah, you always just wanted to put on a show." You were like, "Mommy, look at me, look at me, look at me," and I was like, "Yeah, that that kind of makes sense."
It checks out.
Yes, and so but you know what? I feel like I always carried this spirit of, like, main character energy into everything in the
Mhm.
best and worst ways, but, when you find something that works, sometimes you just have to keep going, and so when I realized that it could be a real career is when I had graduated from high school, I was really trying to decide, like, what do I do now? Do I go to school for classical music? Do I go to school for communication? Like, where do we find our place in life as an adult? I chose to do communication, which I never regret, but I knew in my heart, I was like, doing communication is gonna serve me well, but I've gotta be able to know what I'm communicating and why. Because
Okay.
everything that I had been through prior to that, going to Jamaica, finding classical music, coming to high school, also, like, refining that as well, I couldn't throw that away,
Mhm.
right? And so I wanted to make sure that I built up a set of skills that would support the talent that I was given so that it became a partnership and it became 2 things coming together to make me who I am authentically.
Now, what was that conversation like with your parents? I always like to ask people this question because when we think about especially Caribbean upbringing, just black households in general, a lot of people kind of grew up with the same, doctor, lawyer, teacher, engineer. So when you went to your mom and been like, okay, I kind of want to go the classical music route, like what was her thought process on that?
My mom, I really have to give her so much credit. From I was young, my mom has never been the kind of parent to say, "You must do this, you must do that." Like, she has always given me so much space to be exactly who I need to be, and I think that's really the reason that I've gone as far as I have because she's always given me that blessing that no matter who you decide to be, if you decide to change it all tomorrow, I'm in your corner, and that kind of freedom is what I wish for every I get emotional thinking about it, but, like, every young Black woman, I wish that kind of freedom and acceptance because I think it's unlimited opportunity for who you can become. I hope that answers the question, but that's really what I feel like I was able to just do everything that I wanted to do because I knew that she was in my corner. So going to Ryerson for communication, she was like, "Yes, that's a great backup plan, but that's not who you are, and I'm still gonna support you when you find out who you are."
I'm getting emotional hearing that because that's not something I think a lot of people get the chance to experience. Sometimes that kind of support comes later down the line where you've kind of proven, like, hey, this is what I've been capable of doing and I want to continue down this path. But to hear that your mom was very much like, I am rooting for you day one, let's do it. And the fact that you were in a program and she's like, sure, do you, but I'm gonna just wait here until you actually realize your gift.
And mind you, like, she also like, she went to university as well, and she did English, so this was also very much in her ball court. My aunt, she was a professor at the University of the West Indies in Jamaica for communication. So it was very much in the family to do communication in some sort, but I think they just me so well that they were like, "This is a stepping stone for something else."
I'm getting emotional. Like looking at you, I can tell you're getting emotional, but like hearing that, that's a mama, you did well, mama. You did well.
Diva D, baby.
Yep.
Mhm.
Now, when you think about the industry, what is something that's still like misunderstood about younger artists who are blending traditions with modern culture and platforms? Because again, like we're saying, opera music is not really just the out there type of genre, and it seems to still have such a taboo around it. But you've taken it to another level. But what are the misconceptions?
That's a very interesting question. I think I would say when you're dealing with nuance, it's a very tricky position to be in because you're dealing with the expectation of maintaining a standard of what it was, but also balancing that with the possibility of what it could be. And so when we talk about what people could misunderstand about blending culture and blending tradition with innovation, I think a lot of times people think that we have to completely flip everything on its head. I think that's what people think young people want to do is just flip everything on its head, do it all over, tear down what was there before. But the truth is we do need the foundation. We very much like, I don't think I could have gone as far as I have without the training from theater, without the training, the vocal training from opera and classical music to be able to do pop music, to be able to do fusion. We very much need the foundation, but I think we need the freedom to also explore what it could be and recognize that that process sometimes is messy. Sometimes it means that we've got to block out some things in order to hear something new, maybe hear a new melody. You know what I mean? So it's a messy process. And I think sometimes people think that we just want to erase everything that was. That's not true. That's not true. I think it's heavily embedded in the music, it's heavily embedded in the culture. Everything that we hear in a pop song was written and sung 300, 400 years ago. The stories are still the same because they're all centered being human. They're all centered around that, whether it's love, heartbreak, jealousy, loneliness, all of those real emotions are still present in the music that we're writing and reading and singing today. All we're doing is just taking it out of that time and bringing it into our own.
Have you ever like came across people who've been like, "Oh my gosh, like what are you doing? This is not how it's supposed to be done." Or have you found that people are a little bit more open to it or open to you as an artist?
I've definitely encountered both. I think there are a lot of people who naturally feel that opera and classical music should stay preserved in time. And I think there's a truth to that. But I also have met a lot of people who I think are now seeing the value in it evolving. Everything has to evolve at some point. Change is inevitable. And for us to also preserve what was, sometimes we do have to allow it to adapt and evolve and actually be very relevant to what we're feeling and experiencing in real time.
That's good at least that you're kind of open to both because I think people again, there's just this misconception that, oh, we're gonna go from one extreme to the next. And it's like, no, in order to know where you're going, you have to know where you came from.
Absolutely.
And to be the student, to be the teacher, you have to respect both levels because nothing can stay the same forever. And you can't be where you are today without those who came before you.
Absolutely. I think one of the most important things that I'm learning in this chapter of life and in creativity is that as a young person in any kind of art form, yes, there are people who might be further on in their journey and more experienced, and they may hold the key to your future, but you also hold the key to their legacy, right? And so it does have to be a two-way give where we can honor the work that has been done in the past, and you can also provide the practical tools for us to secure and create a new future with all of that in mind.
I'm loving your answers right now because it's really just putting a lot of things into perspective and giving people a real insight into something that is not really like familiar territory. And when you think about also just the opera music, classical music, is this something that you wish more people would start having access to, like whether it's being played on like mainstream radio or just through social media?
I think operas and theater, I see them both in the same light. I think productions need to be cheaper for people to see. I think that's the beginning of the conversation about how we make it accessible. People cannot appreciate what they cannot experience. You cannot appreciate the magic of theater if you don't get the opportunity to experience it. That's just how it goes. You don't get to appreciate opera if you don't get to experience it, right? So you can't even be upset with someone for feeling like, oh, opera's outdated if they've never experienced it. If we don't make it available, if we don't take it to the people, they can't appreciate it. They can't want to preserve it. You know what I mean? So it starts with making it cheaper to see. I think it starts with bringing it into places where people wouldn't necessarily expect to see an opera, expect to hear classical music, expect to see theater. Bring it to schools, bring it to countries that maybe like that's not the epitome of their culture, right? Bring artists from other countries and have a cultural exchange so that we're speaking the same languages, because that's a big part of it too, is that opera is often done in different languages. So you got the language barrier, you don't understand what's being said. We can't expect people to learn a whole different language. You know what I mean? So in that sense, you've got to make sure that you're speaking the same language, both literally and figuratively, about how we make it understandable, how we make it comprehensible. Then we can start talking about how we make it evolve.
Well, I kind of want to stay on this topic a bit and talk about accessibility. And if it were up to you, how would you make that more accessible?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I would I would make them cheaper. It's not that simple. I think that artists need to be paid a fair wage. I think that creative teams, production teams, like it's really it's a tricky thing to talk about because I'm sure that the theater companies as well, they also want to make it more accessible. So it's really that balance between accessibility and sustainability. And I think what that means is that we're now in such a beautiful time where there are new theater companies figuring out new ways to do things that take care of their artists, take care of their patrons, but also create a very sustainable environment. There's a new company that I'm actually working with called Twilight, the Twilight Company. We're working on a special purpose, which is a beautiful play about the Russian royal family that was murdered. And but really, what it is at the core of it, it's about their lives and the love that they share for each other. And I think that's also something that like we've also tried to make sure that we are also taking care of each other as actors. We're taking care of each other and the creative team as well. And so I think new companies are seeing the opportunity in working with younger actors because now we're building skills, we're building the discipline, and also
Hmm.
creating a sustainable environment.
No, that's very interesting. And I think people always feel like you have to either go one way or the other way. And it's like, no, at this rate, if you want people to have more exposure to the arts in all avenues, then we definitely have to find that medium. So I like the way you kind of explained that in a sense where it is fair in to all parties, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and I just again like I said it earlier, but part of that is realizing that that process is going to be messy. It's not going to be cookie cutter. It's not going to be favorable to everybody involved. It's a cost worth paying for the future of the arts.
Hmm.
It's about paying it forward.
Something I also want to touch on because We talked about a lot about opera, but you also talk about theater. And what was your introduction into theater? Was it through classical music? Was it through school? Because how did you blend these two worlds together?
Mhm. So actually, my first experience being in theater was actually right before high school. I was in Broadway Bound Academy, and it was more so like a summer camp, but it was really just about like learning the magic of theater, and that kind of segued into high school. I went to an arts high school, Wexford Collegiate, where we did theater, that we did musical theater, and that was our specialty. It was a specialized program. And it was so beautiful because we all had to audition to be at that school. And at one point we even had to audition to stay in the program. And so it really just created this kind of like grit in you, something to fight for. And I think that that foundation has really helped and it's served everything that I've done in life because it's like it's the little things about late, what is it? Early is on time is late, late is unemployed. You like those kind of principles, they stay with you. Yeah. They
We
stay
like,
with
wait a minute.
you. Well, late is unemployed, baby. But they stay with you even if you leave theater. Like a lot of the people that I know that had started in theater are doing brilliant things. They're makeup artists, they're hairstylists, they are set designers, and all those foundations have set the tone for a life of excellence. And I really do attribute that to theater.
People have to realize that a lot of these life skills that you learned are not just for that particular program, but they if you really do pay attention, it carries on through other parts of your life.
Mhm.
And I think that's even something I kind of live by that rule. Now, see, I never thought about, late equals unemployed. We kind of left that part. But definitely on time is late and early is on time. I can
Mhm.
definitely go with, rule number 1 and 2. Number 3, optional.
She's just subjective.
Right. But I love how these things like really stuck with you to the point where now you continue to apply them afterwards and you can tell that you weren't just there as a student just to hear and just to do whatever, but you were taking in every lesson. You were studying.
I think there's also a beautiful thing about like learning through osmosis. Like there were people, again, there were people older than us that were really paying it forward and making sure that we understood why. Like it's not just about taking in information for the sake of taking in information. It's like, why do we care about being on time? Why are we taking care of the actors and the creative team? Why are we learning our material ahead of time? Like, you know what I mean? Like, they really took the time to break that down, and you learn through each other and you pour into each other. And I think that's exactly what a community is supposed to do.
Oh, yes, absolutely. Now when we take a few steps more into your future. You played the role of Jesse Norman in Coming Home, the musical play. What did stepping into the shoes of someone who inspired you teach you about yourself as an artist?
I would say stepping into the role of Jessie, like that was a huge role to fill. Like she's someone who I have always looked up to, but I think as I really studied her as a person, not as Jessie Norman, but like really as a person, you realize that people are so much more than a title. And I think being learning how to become her character made me realize that we really do limit ourselves by what we do. You know, I'm an actor, I'm a host of a show. I like we all like to limit ourselves to our professions, and I think that we do ourselves such a disservice by doing that because we're all supposed to be at our core well-rounded humans. We're supposed to be mothers, daughters, sisters, friends, you know what I mean? Lovers, like whatever it is, like those are the things that I think should define us. And I think she really understood that too, that even though she was Jessie Norman, she
Mhm.
was still a beloved aunt. She was still a friend. She was still all these other things that held just as much weight. And I think that's so important, especially for young women in whatever professions they're working in, is to not allow themselves to just be defined by what they do for others.
Where do you think that came from, though, that we have to just stay in one lane? Because I do appreciate that thought process of you need to be well rounded, but I think there's so much people who think, oh, if I'm going to be a singer, then I just need to be a singer. I just need to study this. I'm not allowed to expand. And where do you think that pigeonhole came from?
I think that it comes from the basic human desire to understand
Hmm.
things. We label things in order to understand them, right? And especially when we don't understand something, we have to give it a name. We have to, you know what I mean? And I think that's where it comes from. So I don't think it's inherently bad. I think that it's both. I think that yes, we can try to understand things, but we can also just be. And that holds just as much power.
I think something that people need to really take in is like jack of all trades, a master of none. You're allowed to be well rounded, and you can be a master at all the things if you really like put your mind to it.
Mhm.
Like, this is not really a generation, unfortunately, where you can just stick to the one lane.
Well, here's the thing. Yeah, yeah, I used to think that too. And what I would say is that there's really a cost to everything. I think
Yeah.
if you choose to be loyal to a profession,
Mhm.
you become an expert. But if you choose value to an industry,
Yeah.
you become a trailblazer, right? And mind you, and what I would argue is that we actually don't need as many trailblazers as we think. I think we actually very much need experts. We need people who are saying, I am going to stick down this path.
Mhm.
We need vocal teachers who have only sung classical music so they can tell you if you're doing it right or not. You
Yeah.
need someone who has only performed theater so they can actually teach the next generation all of those standards. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? If everybody's a trailblazer, then we've got trails going all the same places. I think it's both. I think we need people who are willing to stick it out in one thing. And I think we need people who have a well-rounded perspective because that creates a very diverse, in the grand scheme, it creates a very, very diverse community. And I think that's exactly what the Canadian entertainment industry needs now. We need standards and we need innovation.
So the people who are in charge of funding, broadcasting, and media entertainment, I really hope that you picked up on that great one-liner right there. Like, we're telling you what the people want, what the people need.
I think the people who have money, they are the people who need to have a well-rounded perspective. That's my
Mhm.
bias. That's my bias.
No,
But
it's true.
because then if we're only funding pop music, that's all we get on the radio. And that's great. We love
Yeah.
pop. I love a good pop tune. But we can't just have that. So we've got to have a well-rounded perspective when we are in a position of power to be able to disseminate things.
Exactly. Don't be surprised if a few months from now, a few years from now, that gets put into the playbook and you're like, do you remember when we had this conversation?
It'll be the AI will pull it out.
Yeah.
They'll pull out the conversation.
Reference this day, this week, this conversation. You're welcome. You're welcome, Canadian funders. Going back to the opera and the theater space, were there ever moments where you felt like you had to challenge the expectations or stereotypes placed on you?
Definitely. Anyone who's ever done theater, I think there is this unspoken expectation to mask, is what I call it. And so there's a lot of typecasting. Again, it's the way we understand human behavior is that we typecast. And that happens in theater all the time. Me, I'm very clearly a Black woman, but I sing mostly classical music, but I also dance hip hop. Like all these different things. I have never seen the character that has done those things. I've never seen it. Right. And so it's interesting to walk into spaces where I don't fully consider myself a total theater person. So I don't mask well. I do not mask well. I just come in sometimes. And I think that sometimes that makes it like an interesting dynamic because then people are like, oh, how do we perceive her? Like, is she the funny person? Is she the damsel in the distress? Is she like the person who's aloof and then actually is like really, profound about something? And so it's fun. I don't look at it negatively anymore. It's kind of fun to see people try to like analyze and try to understand who I am. I'm like, save yourself the stress. I am all the things. I am every woman. Like I said, it's very much human nature to try to label things that we don't understand. Right, and so you also and then there's also the point too where, do I have to make myself someone that you need to understand? Or can you accept that you might never understand me? Because I think acceptance comes before understanding, right? Do you have to understand who I am?
So it's giving you're not out here code switching for no one.
I might, but I don't feel like I have to. I might if I feel like that's what I'd like to do that day.
That's something where a lot of us, I don't want to say we lack the confidence, but a lot of us always feel like once you're in these rooms, and especially when you are the minority in this room, it's a lot of times where we kind of like just kind of make ourselves a lot smaller and we want to conform to what they want from us just to make sure, okay, I want to stay in the room. I want the chance to be considered for this part. I want the chance to be a part of this production. And it's just like, when you're not true to yourself, how long can you kind of keep up this act?
And how much does it serve the work for you to not be true to yourself, you know? So that's the lens that I look at it from. Again, I'm not saying that code switching isn't an important skill. I think that we should all learn how to speak different languages because that's also what connects us to people that maybe we wouldn't necessarily find some commonality in naturally. I do believe in, but I also would caution, especially as Black people, I'd caution us against immediately feeling like we have to code switch in certain environments. Sometimes being exactly who God has created you to be teaches other people how to accept you.
Okay, that's a word. I just want to know, like, how did you? I feel like it's definitely a confidence thing, and if it's something that you kind of grew into, or is that something that was always within you? Because I feel like there's a lot of people who right now could be listening to this and are like, I get what she's saying, but like, I don't know if I have the confidence to be myself in that room. How do we get there?
I think it's a dance. I think it's a process. I don't think it's completely linear. There are some spaces that I'm like, I want to shrink and just be here. I think there are spaces that I'm like, I am going to be exactly who I want to be. I don't think that it's any one or the other. I think we learn it, we unlearn confidence sometimes, and we get back up again. I think that's what it is. I think it's also having the right people around you who know when you're not being yourself as well. I think that's also an important part of it too. It's not just on you, it's also about having the right support system that says, "Hey, you didn't show up like yourself in that room. What's going on?" Having someone call you, and that's a beautiful process too, because then that helps you realize where you're not being yourself. I don't think we can always be confident. That doesn't seem realistic. I think that we can choose where we want to show up and how we want to show up in different spaces. And that process teaches people who we are and it teaches us who we are.
I feel like that's something where definitely a lot of people can take away from and really start building and understand that it's not just an overnight success, it's not an overnight build, but just like anybody else, whether you are emerging, whether you're mid level, even whether you're a professional, it doesn't matter who you are, at some point you still have to build to that level.
Everybody gets imposter syndrome. There is not a single creative person that has never had imposter syndrome or wondered like, am I qualified for this? But sometimes you don't need to be qualified. You just need to be called.
Exactly. Take the call, can figure it out later.
Hmm.
But don't just give up on yourself right off the bat with you said the imposter syndrome with the fear of I can't do this because you really don't know your capabilities until you are put into that situation or until that moment presents itself. And you don't
And
want to just give up for the sake of giving up.
and some things are not even supposed to be to say you won this thing. Some things are really
Hmm.
supposed to be a learning process. Some things are just supposed to be a lesson about like
Yeah.
what is the consequence of not showing up as yourself? What is the consequence of showing up as yourself? Right? Like some things are really just supposed to be a learning process. I don't think it's linear.
Now, my next question for you, and this is something where I always put into my questionnaire when I ask my guests, what is something that you wish that people spoke about more? And I found this very interesting because you mentioned wanting to discuss sponsorship versus mentorship. And a lot of emerging creatives hear about mentorship, but they don't really think about sponsorship as a thing. Or when you think about sponsorship, sometimes it's more like, okay, like, am I giving money to this person? Am I, maybe buying a class for them? Whatever the case may be. Why do you think that this distinction matters? And How did you get to this realization, especially when it comes to the entertainment industry?
Yeah, I think especially our Canadian entertainment landscape, there's been so much conversation about mentoring new generations and, telling them what works and what doesn't work. And but the truth is we are doing that from the experience that we have. It's almost akin to going to school for something, theorizing it, but not actually having the practical tools and not having someone put their name on the line to put you in the rooms, right? And so it's almost like saying, it's like telling a child, okay, this is how you cook a steak. You have to get your this, you have to get your that, but then getting upset that maybe they didn't do it the right way or they didn't use the right pan. Well, did we give them the practical tools to actually make the steak, right? A lot of people will talk about sponsorship being just financial. It's not. It's not always just financial. Sometimes it's about just saying someone's name in a room and saying, no, I am willing to make sure they have what they need, not just tell them what to do. I want to make sure they have what they need. I will be responsible for that so that they can do the work. And I
Mhm.
think that's one of the biggest conversations that I think is missing from the industry right now is sponsorship, especially for younger generations. Let the relationship lead the way that you sponsor that person. Lead the way that you give them the tools because you know who they are. You know what they're capable of, right? And I think that's also that like paying it forward that I wish that we were doing more.
How do you measure that point where you feel like that person has surpassed mentorship and now going into sponsorship? In case someone's listening to this and be like, okay, I might have this person in mind, but how do I know when?
I mean, it's tricky because everybody is different, of course, and everyone's journey is going to look different. But
Mhm.
that's where the relationship and the trust that's built through that relationship will tell you like this person doesn't need to be told what to do anymore. They are doing the things. Maybe they're not doing it perfectly. Maybe they've failed a couple times and now they've learned through experience. I think that might be the turning point is experience that allows us to know who's ready for mentorship, who's ready for sponsorship, and who might need a little bit of both.
No, that's definitely something where I'm even thinking about myself as well. It's like, okay, if I want to take that next step into mentoring people or when I seek the mentorships or the people who I have mentoring me now, and I feel like it's always just like a full circle cycle. How do we know when to take those next levels? So, girl, you just taught me a thing or two, something for me to kind of just keep an eye out as well.
It's a circle.
Yeah. Now, I want to kind of backtrack a bit. I always like jump back and forth because sometimes there's conversations where the answers kind of take us one way and then it just gives us, or just a rainbow of things to think about. But when we think about your career again, and we say your career spans multiple areas of entertainment, how did you learn to embrace the different things about you as an actress, as a singer, as a performer?
I think that it comes in waves of self exploration
Hmm.
and also exploring beyond the self as well. I think it's realizing how big, like something for me, travel always does it for me. Seeing the world outside of my own four walls, that does wonders for my creativity. It does wonders for self exploration. And it does, and of course, it does wonders for your career as well because you realize all these things are connected. Being in theater is connected to being a musician, is connected to being an actor in film. It's connected to just, again, being a person, a normal person. It's connected to being a friend because when you're doing all of these things in entertainment, what you're really doing is studying what it's like to be a human being. It's studying the relationships of human beings. It's studying the emotions, the behaviors of being a human being, right? And so when I travel to other places and I see the way other people do human life, it inspires me so much. And it also just makes me realize like being in Canada, there's so many things that we could complain about, but what are our problems? I mean, like, you know what I mean? There's so many things we could complain about, but there's so many things to be so grateful for. There's so many things to celebrate. We live in one of the most like diverse countries in the world. There's so many things that come with that and the way that we can challenge ourselves to think and to love, feel. It's a beautiful gift, and I think that's what travel really does for me.
What's one country that stands out to you the most?
I think South Africa. South Africa, yes, that was such a life-changing experience in 2024. It went with, Corpus, which is like a dance projects. They're a theater company as well, and we had gone to Pretoria and just performed this very, like, intimate, lovely piece outside, and the way that it was received by so many different people. If you know South Africa, it's very diverse, and there's so many different communities and tribes and languages, and it's so beautiful, and the way that it was received by so many different communities teaches us about how people live their real lives. And I think we all came back so full and so enriched by that experience that it can't help but shape the way that you see your own daily life.
I can only imagine how beautiful that must have been.
Stunning. Stunning. Safaris, like gorgeous. An absolutely beautiful country. I left part of my heart in South Africa. Definitely.
So is it when you get to travel to these places, is it a lot of time that you're traveling as part of a production? Are you doing it solo?
I think it's a bit of both. Like
Mhm.
I love doing it as part of a production because again, you're connecting the art with the art of living.
Yeah.
And then you're doing what you love as well in that self-discovery. I think sometimes there are times where I'm like, I need to be in Jamaica. I need to go back to like the places that I found other parts of myself. And that might not be work related, but it might just be self-discovery. So I think it's a bit of both. I'm learning that my philosophy in life is to be a little bit of everything. Try a little bit of everything.
Yeah. I think that's a very healthy philosophy to have, especially in this day and age. It doesn't hurt to try. If it works for you, it works, and if it doesn't, it doesn't. But I always tell people like I don't want to experience the shoulda, coulda, wouldas.
Mm-mm, mm-mm.
I
We'll
don't
all,
want any regrets.
we will all have our regrets, but I don't want mine to be what I could have done.
Exactly.
I'd rather regret things I did than the things I didn't.
And be like, maybe we won't do that again. It was great for the time.
That's it.
We don't need a second round. It's good. We're fine. Now, through a lot of your answers today, it kind of touched on community. We touched on audience. What's the difference between building a community and just having an audience? And how are they both valuable to an artist?
Yeah, I would say that community is, I think they both change and they both serve very specific purposes. And I would encourage any artist to know the difference because some
Mhm.
community is not your audience and sometimes your audience is not your community. And I've been through like processes in life where I've had to learn that the hard way because again it goes back to speaking the same languages. It's about speaking the language that your audience will understand and also speaking the language that your community understands. Your community is filled with people who maybe do similar things, they're in the same industry, maybe they are your friends, your family, they're your support system. They're the people that you actually lean on and they're the people that you actually pour into. It's reciprocal, right?
Yeah.
Your audience can be that, but it can also be a very transactional thing as well,
Mhm.
where you provide something and it is consumed and maybe get feedback in a way that your community might not give you feedback. You know what I mean? Community might give you feedback that your audience will not. Really important to have both, but know the difference. Because if you mistake your audience for your community or vice versa, sometimes you will get yourself in trouble because you're not speaking the same language. Lot of room for misinterpretation. There's a lot of room to offend people in a way that maybe you didn't intend to because you're speaking their language.
Interesting. Talking to people, especially who are performers, I talk to a lot of people who are behind the scenes. So it's very interesting to hear someone who's technically in front of the camera, the person who has like more of a public presence, and how you differentiate the two. And I find that very, very fascinating.
But mind you, like there's still also interlap. There's overlap because then that's its own perspective. I don't think that always have to be oil and water. I think that people who are going to be part of your community who are also your audience. But when you are creating, you have to know whether you are creating for your community or if you are creating for your audience. That can filter into whether you're doing just content, if you're doing social media stuff, are you creating content for your community or are you creating content for your audience? Are you creating music for your community or for your audience?
Just to give people kind of like a checklist, what would you say would be the three main differences that you would tell people like before you press upload, before you press send? These are the things that we need to look out for so I know who I'm serving.
Are these people that you are pouring into and they are pouring into you? What kind of feedback am I looking for? Am I even looking for feedback at all? And then I would say, if this group of people changes, do I feel like I need to change what I am creating for them? If their opinions change, if their values change, if their politics change, do I feel like I also need to evolve with that?
That's a very good checklist for people to have. And I think because right now, I feel like when people are creating any kind of content, regardless of the kind of artist that you are, we tend to fall in sometimes into this box of wanting to please people, but we realize we're trying to please just one kind of person, and everyone's also afraid about cancel culture. So it's just like, okay, how do I stay in the safety zone? But how do I stay true to myself? But how do I please this audience? How do I stay intact with my community? There's a lot of different things that people are just analyzing to the point where we're blurring the lines. So I feel like that's going to be very helpful.
Yeah, I mean, there's always going to be different things that everybody's going to factor in. And again, community, like this is where it gets tricky too, to your point, is that community in itself is messy in that it's always changing. Who is part of your community this week, this month, this year? It might not be the same community next year. Change with the community, or do you allow your community to find you? And do you do the same thing with your audience? And that's where every artist, every creative person has got to have that conversation with themselves a million times. A million times. You know, so but I think when we get to the point where everything feels so blurry, as you say,
Hmm.
then we've got to stop and ask, who am I doing this for? What do I Am I pouring in or is it just transactional?
Yeah. At the end of the day, you don't want to lose yourself. You
No.
don't want to forget why you started this, why you're doing this. You don't want to lose your why and your purpose.
You can say that again.
Yeah.
You can say that again.
I'm loving this conversation because, like I said, I'm learning so much from just a different viewpoint and someone who understands the behind the scenes, but is also telling you how it is to be on camera, how it is to be on stage, how it is to be in front of a crowd and still be true to who you are. So we thank you for this.
Thank you. Thank you for creating the space for people to talk about what it really is like to be creative, because I think we really are in interesting and a little bit unprecedented times, but I think everything also is a cycle. So it's not that we're the first to ever go through anything like this. That's why we have cultural leaders. That's why we have industry leaders, because they've been through it before us.
Exactly. But on that note, I also want to figure out whether it's opera, whether it's acting, whether it's digital content or storytelling. What do you want people to take away from your work, or what do you want that lesson in that message to be?
I think I would borrow a quote from Jessie Norman herself, in
Hmm.
that pigeonholes are for pigeons. If you're not a pigeon, you don't need to be pigeonholed. You should want a well-rounded life, and that doesn't have to be perfect, and it won't be perfect. If you do it right, it won't be perfect. It's going to be messy, it's going to be sometimes misunderstood, it's going to be exciting, it's gonna be fun, it's gonna be scary, but I think the courage to try to be more than you've been given is the foundation for an extraordinary life.
There is nothing else I can even say to that. That is a beautiful just way to close out this episode. And it's really just shows you that you were given a gift. And this takes me back to the episode that featured Jaleesa. Like, you are given a gift. Who am I to be given this gift and to not do anything with it, to not expand on it, to not reach the full potential that I probably don't even know that's out there, but it's there.
How would you know if you don't experience it? Yeah.
Exactly. Christina, oh my gosh, thank you so, so much for joining me today.
Thank you so much for having me.
If there's anything that we should be looking out for, anything coming down the future pipelines, how can the people support you? Where should they come see you in your next show, your next stage performance?
Yeah, so the next show is The House of Special Purpose. It'll be at the Theater Center June 3rd to June 6th. You can find the link to tickets in my Instagram bio. You can also look up the Twilight Company, a nominal new company for theater actors and actresses. But it'll be a great show. Um, I get to play Maria Romanova, so she's one of the sisters. Yeah, and the writing is phenomenal, so please do come.
Amazing. You guys already heard. Make sure you check it out June 3rd to the 6th. And remind us of your Instagram.
Yes, it's Christina Smith, T.O.
Amazing. Christina, thank you so much for joining me. It was such a pleasure. You guys make sure to check out Christina on socials in a show near you. Definitely follow her on Instagram to keep up to date because she is so, so talented. Y'all don't even know the half of it. The voice, the vocals be vocaling, okay? You gotta let the people know. I gotta give you credit where credit is due,
I
okay?
appreciate it. I appreciate it.
Make sure to follow Noir in Media on all social channels, which includes Threads, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, obviously. Make sure to follow the show on Spotify and anywhere where you can stream the podcast. And follow me on Instagram as well at Natalie Nadeen. And we'll see you in the next episode. Bye.
Bye.